Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to reintroduce to you now. Dr. Cory Jenks is a returning guest on our show. Be sure to check out his first appearance on episode 440 of Boundless Body Radio. He also appeared with his lovely wife, Cassie, on episode 475 of our show. Dr. Cory Jenks earned his Doctor of Pharmacy degree from the University of South Carolina in 2011. Since then, he has practiced as a retail pharmacist, an outpatient clinical pharmacist, and an inpatient clinical pharmacist. His most recent practice was as an ambulatory care clinical pharmacy specialist. Geez, that's a mouthful. Where he applied his passion for lifestyle interventions in the management of chronic disease. In addition to his career as a pharmacist, Cory is also an accomplished improv comedian, having started on his comedy journey in 2013. Since then, Cory has taught, coached, and performed improv for thousands of people. He is the author of 2 books, including his first book, Permission to Care, Building a Healthcare Culture That Thrives in Chaos. Today, Cory travels around the country, speaking and teaching other healthcare professionals on how to apply the valuable skills of improv comedy to create a more adaptable, empathetic, and humanizing healthcare experience. Cory lives in Tucson, Arizona with his lovely family and is one of my favorite people to share Simpsons quotes back and forth via text message. Dr. Cory Jenks, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you so much. Oh, that has been one of the joys of parenthood is my 2 boys are 5 and 7, and I'm introducing Simpsons quotes, and I'm very selective about what I will show them on YouTube of certain clips because I'm not ready for all of the references to have to explain to them. But let's just say that if anyone out there has kids, you've had the struggle of getting their shoes on to get them out the door. There's a great episode where Homer's getting ready for a party and he says, just got to get my shoes on. And he's like playing slot cars and he's in his underwear. So the boys have really loved that one. And then I could sure go for about 100 tacos right about now. On Taco Tuesday, they like to bust that one out. So
That's amazing.
the legacy continues. And so thank you so much for having me. Thanks for sharing Simpsons quotes and all of the lovely bio. It's too much of a mouthful, but here we are. So
Yeah, it is a mouthful. It got my throat a little bit angry at all the advanced words I had to say there. Yeah, man, you're doing amazing work by parenting with The Simpsons. So congratulations to that. It's amazing. I would contend that like the best Simpsons was basically like season like 2 to maybe like 10, 11,
mhm.
12. Because some of the current stuff, like I thought the movie was really great, and some of the current stuff is a little bit hit and miss. But you go back and watch some of those old Simpsons episodes from the '90s, and not only did they hold up, but they were a little bit edgy for the time. There's still some episodes I'm like, wow, they were a little bit edgy.
Yeah, this was for kids. I was watching this in like kindergarten and first grade, but yeah, it we're working on sleep with our 2-year-old daughter. When she does go down, my wife and I, one of our favorite thing is to bust out a Simpsons or there's a new King of the Hill now too, so we'll watch that. But
Oh wow.
I will say this that with the improv comedy background, talking Simpsons, if you're listening, you're like, what does this have to do with anything for health? Play and humor is a big part of life, and I think we often forget that. We get caught up in the macros and the exercise, which is they're important levers to pull. And arguably, if you're eating nothing but cake but laughing the whole time, it's probably not going to be good for your blood sugar. But I think that's something that we often forget is the whole point of this thing is to live a happy, healthy life. And that's one of the things I like to emphasize when I'm speaking and writing is the play side of it, or even with the people I take care of, the clients and patients I used to take care of, is go out and play. We forget that. So that's how you make Simpsons quotes relevant to the beginning of this episode, Casey. Boom.
I'll leave it to you to find a very serious life lesson within talking nonsense about The Simpsons. I absolutely love that. And
Yeah.
I expect nothing less out of you.
Well, thank you.
In life, we come to crossroads, and recently you came to a crossroads in your own life where your scrubs were starting to wear out. Can you tell us about that?
I can. I had worked full time as a pharmacist since 2011, and then in 2022, I found a job working part time because I enjoy going out and speaking. I like writing books, and most of the time like spending time with my kids. And so I had the opportunity to take a job that gave me more time for that kind of activity. And after 3 years, I one of the perks of this job was I got to wear scrubs instead of real clothes with like belts and zippers and stuff. There was a hole in them, and I had to decide would I quit my job or get new scrubs. And I quit my job. Well, I left it. I gave them plenty of notice. Yeah, so that's the joke is that I got a hole in my scrub, so I just decided to quit rather than buy new ones. But no, I decided to take this journey I've been on with metabolic health and have a chance to focus more on that. We can talk more about the new project that I'm working on there, have more time to go and speak and make people laugh and bring some joy and love into their life and teach them how to live a healthy life with all the different pillars. And what's funny is I did do you saw Casey does his research, folks, by the way. He saw this post and I did this on LinkedIn and someone commented, nice ChatGPT story. And I will tell you that that joke was something I came up with in the kitchen with my wife. It wasn't good. That's how you know it was mine. But that was a real thing if the guy who commented about my ChatGPT related post, who was wrong about it, is listening. So I was proud of that premise. That was a good reason to leave my job. I had new clothes or to leave my job. It was leave my job.
Pretty straightforward. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. I want to talk about the story leading up to that. And I did find the post very funny, regardless of who thought it was funny or not. I thought it was funny.
Thank you.
But that's a really big decision. So before we kind of, you know, talk about that decision and new projects and everything, set us up a little bit about your history. It's been a little while since you've been on our show. So tell us how,
Mhm.
a standard, trained pharmacist got into the world of like metabolic health and clinic or chronic disease the way you did.
Yeah, so as a pharmacist, I did a residency, which a lot of people realize pharmacists can do. And this advanced training gave me the opportunity to work in a clinic where we have what was called a collaborative practice agreement, which is a very fancy way of saying there's lots of really sick people who have high blood pressure, high sugar, obesity. There's not enough doctors, nurse practitioners to see them all. So we signed this agreement that says they'll oversee me as a clinical pharmacist or any other clinical pharmacist. I see these patients in my clinic like you would go to see any doctor's visit, and I have independent prescription authority with their oversight to adjust their medications. And so the idea being a chronic disease, and I'm using air quotes here, manager, is that I'm going to put you on blood pressure medicines, blood sugar medicines, cholesterol medicines to keep your numbers good, which when your blood sugar's high and your blood pressure's high, it's bad. Like damage is happening. I'm not going to deny that we need to improve those. Now, how we go about that, we're probably more on the same page there. But that was my job, was to utilize medications to improve these numbers. And for years, and my focus and passion was in type 2 diabetes. For years, the numbers would improve, but patients would then have this long list of medicines. You'd have complications, drug interactions, side effects. And around 2015, 2016, I was listening to the Adam Carolla show because I like comedy, and this weird guy on there is named Vinny Tortorich talking about this thing, NSNG, no sugar, no grains. And my wife's a nurse practitioner, and we're curious health. I mean, we were fit people, we weren't out of shape, but thought, we've done our vegetarian month, we've done our no sugar month, which was actually the month we felt better. Let's try this no sugar, no grain thing, and we did it. We were less hungry. Like I'm a high-strung guy, pharmacist or type A. I've chilled out a ton, cutting a lot of the carbs and processed foods out of my diet. And then you go down the rabbit hole, and the same story is Jason Fung, Nina Teicholz, Gary Taubes, like the low carb world kind of got hold of us. And we started living that way. We heard the stories from patients getting better. And so in my practice, I would talk about lifestyle and the traditional like eat less, move more, count calories, low fat, blah, 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 do cardio. Okay, whatever. Great. No one would get better. And so I started talking about this low carb approach, which has evidence behind it. So I wasn't just going super rogue. And this amazing thing started happening. Patients started getting like better. Like I could put you on a medicine and your numbers would go lower. And the powers that be would clap their hands and say, yay, your A1C went down 0.7%. Or I could have you change how you're eating, change how you're moving your body, and your A1C would drop 5 points and we'd get you off for medicines. So that was like, and you can't unsee it. It's every clinician you talk to says that. I can't unsee this. Everyone should have this opportunity to reverse their chronic disease. Now, every patient that came in my clinic didn't want to do that. And so I was able to offer whatever path you want. If you want to use more medications, we can do that. And here's the risks and benefits. You want to try diet and lifestyle? Let's do that. But I'm sorry, we like taking A1C from 15 to 6.5% in 3 months, which I've seen happen. It's not metformin doing that. It's not Ozempic even can do that. So that's doing that was amazing. And then I was doing it part time, which was great. I had balance with family and doing this, but I wanted to do more. And so another pharmacist who's very pro lifestyle and I started a podcast, the Diabetes Remission Roadmap. And I decided to leave my job so that I could focus on creating the tools and content to give people the ability to get their lives back. So I
Wow.
hung the scrubs up with the holes. And for now, I am not an actively practicing pharmacist. I am going to keep my license active. I'm not going to say I'm never going to go back to working as a pharmacist. So if I go back to working and the person calls me a hypocrite, don't call me that, because I made it very clear. I'm leaving this for now because I want to pursue this thing that I think has more meaning and potentially more impact. But I may be back if the perfect pharmacist job came along that said, we need a deprescribing pharmacist right now, Cory, and you're the guy, but we also need to tell jokes. I'd be like, okay, I think this job was made for me. But for now, I'm having a lot of fun helping people through the podcast and some coaching we're doing.
That's amazing. Well, good for you. Yeah, I just, the more people I talk to that take a chance on something like this, even if it doesn't work out the way they think it will work out, they never regret it. Like you'll never regret, just trying something on your own that you feel is impactful, and you're the perfect voice for that. Your unique combination of, improv and comedy, your ability to speak and relate to people is so valuable. And I think it's a big miss out there. So regardless of where you land up, where you end up and where you land, I think you're going to be able to make an amazing impact. So kudos for you for taking the chance.
Well, thank you. And I think those were the discussions my wife and I had. Like when I went from full to part-time, my mood and affect improved dramatically. And then going from, I mean, I've only been at this now as we record this about 6 weeks of not working actively as a pharmacist, but the it gets you get to be fun and creative without the constraints of a corporate medicine telling you that you have to do certain things that might not align with your values. And I admit that my wife and I are in a very fortunate place through work and luck and breaks that we've had to be able to take this chance. And as you said, I think I will never claim to be clinically the best pharmacist or provider. There's lots of smarter people out there, but I would say that I really enjoyed relating to people, and that's finding ways to fit a solution into any individual's life is one of my favorite challenges. I guess, I'd have a patient that would say, "Oh, it's too hot outside. I'm in Tucson. Too hot outside to walk." Okay. Do you watch TV? Hours of TV. Great. Can you walk in place while you watch TV? Yeah. So, and I've seen the sugars and insulins and weights go down just walking during commercial breaks. Okay. Well, that's not in any textbooks, not any guideline. You need to get 30 minutes of vigorous activity outside. Yes, ideally, yes. But when it's 115 degrees, they're not going outside. What can we do? So start with where the person or the patient or the client is and work from there. So that's the fun choose your own adventure challenge that I find myself in.
That's awesome. Okay, well, forgive the ignorance. I've been fairly healthy for most of my life. I've needed very few medications, so I've had very few interactions with pharmacists besides, chatting with you and other pharmacists that we've hosted on the show. When I think of pharmacy, I think of walking up at CVS and somebody's going to fill my prescription and I'm just going to go pick it up. I don't imagine the time that I would be able to talk to the pharmacist to be able to help me with a chronic issue that I was having. So tell us
hmm
exactly, through your career, working multiple different positions in
hmm
pharmacy, how you were able to evolve that into what you were doing more recently, where you did have time, you had resources, you know,
Yeah.
again, to be able to relate to people and do what you were really loving, which is, again, talking to people, relating to people, telling
Yeah.
people jokes. Like, how did that evolve for you?
Well, so I think our traditional idea of a pharmacist is your CVS or Walgreens. It's called a retail or community pharmacist. And so the bulk of their business model is product, it's medications, it's vaccines. And so there really isn't a lot of time if you're working in a community pharmacy. Now, there's some independent pharmacies that are doing some very unique and cool things that partially because out of necessity, because the pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs cut reimbursements so much they have to find new revenue streams, which is one of those not a great place to be in, but it's forcing an evolution in clinical services, which is great. But majority of the time, you're right. You go to the CVS, you drop a prescription off, they fill it, and you get out of there. So there's not as much time for that. Another role pharmacists play are in hospitals. So they're compounding IVs, getting medications to the floor for patients. They're doing what's called clinical work. Some of them are rounding with medicine teams. And then what I was doing, it's called ambulatory care or primary care pharmacy. So the whole point of me is to have that 20 to 30-minute visit with a patient to go over in depth that issue. So the way I got to do it was I got to find a cool pharmacy job that's unique. And as I say, pharmacists are terrible advertisers of our services. Like my parents, they didn't know what I did until I wrote my first book. When I explained seeing patients. Like during COVID, I worked from home and they just did not understand how are you not touching the pills from your house? It's because I don't touch the pills. So it's a world of pharmacy, and I think every pharmacist I will give credit is a clinical pharmacist. We all have the clinical knowledge, but I had a specific role designed for sit down in an office or have a phone call or have a virtual visit. Let's spend 20 minutes, 30, 40 minutes, go through your diabetes medicines and your sugars and make the adjustments. Go through the weight goals you want to have, go through your blood pressure problems. We would do smoking cessation. And so because I was given that time and that depth of a single issue or a couple issues, we could get into more of the lifestyle things. And really for me it's a simple question of do you want to be do you want to be on all of this medication? Because many patients were never asked the question. They were just told it's progressive diabetes, you'll be on these medicines for life, so here's your medicines and take them. And when you ask the question, they didn't realize, oh, there's an option. My doctor said I would be on this for life. He said, I'm doing terrible. I need more insulin. Well, let's talk about what you're doing. What are you eating? How are you moving? What time are you going to bed? What's your stressors? What's modifiable? What are you willing and able to do? And then when you figure out what they actually want, maybe they do. Like I have family members that have diabetes and they say, I'm taking my glipizide and I'm eating my cookies. I say, great. You will not hear a word from me unless you want other advice. But then when you say, I hate taking medicines, I hate going to the pharmacy. Well, let's give you a path to not need that as much. And so that's the beauty. I mean, I was very, and like, if you're a pharmacist listening, working in retail, and I walked away from a clinical job, you're like, what are you doing, Cory? I have a drive-through. What? I get it. And I'm very convicted in what I'm trying to do. That's why I walked away from a very desirable pharmacist job, we'll just say, in the world of pharmacy to try this other path of helping with remission.
Wow. Well, thank you for explaining that, but that puts it much better into context and perspective. How
Mhm.
many of you exist in the world? Like, are you like a dime a dozen? Are all people getting an experience where they can contact a pharmacist and have somebody discuss any kind of lifestyle thing, or were you a unicorn out there from what you could tell?
Not quite a unicorn. So within the VA healthcare system and in Indian Health, like in federal facilities, there's a lot of clinical pharmacists. So this is available if you're a veteran or if you're within the Indian Health Service. There's a lot of ambulatory care clinical pharmacists. My last 3 years, I was in the private sector, and I would say there's less of us in the private sector. Just like a lot of people would come to see me and they said, I needed to see the pharmacist. I thought there would be a bunch of pills here, but we didn't even go over pills, or you don't have any physical product there. So there's not as much of that clinical service in primary care, like in private practice. I think there's some legal boundaries to overcome sometimes, although there are some states that are pushing out pharmacist practitioners that are giving a lot more independence to pharmacists to practice and do these types of things, even with less oversight from a physician or a nurse practitioner or other provider. And I'm not an expert in that legal field. And to give you a number of me, we would have to pause the podcast. I could look up the Labor Bureau statistics, but
Total assumption. Yeah.
based on your experience and most people's experiences, when I explained what my roles were, they were very surprised. And then they were like, oh, that's actually a good idea. And providers, it was like 50-50. Half of them, you get a pharmacist in the clinic and they're like, oh my gosh, you make my life so much better, so much easier. I love that I can send you my patients. And then there's the part that say, I'm the doctor, I don't want any help, which is fine. I wasn't one to fight it. I found I had some great people I worked with in most of my roles that were very grateful for the work I was doing. And then when I was able to get them off medicines and see better, we want to see better health and better numbers, of course. But to do that while needing less medicines and losing weight and gaining confidence, and as you probably interviewed many people, the mental health improves, the pain improves, all of this improves when you fix that underlying metabolic disease.
Yeah, absolutely. No, okay, so that's wonderful. And the job satisfaction you must have getting people off of medications, it must have been absolutely amazing versus, the common story we hear, you're on two, then three, then four, then 27 or however many it is. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Is there within the world of pharmacy, is there any kind of conflict of interest? Like your job is to give people prescriptions, get people's pills, but you want to get people off prescriptions and pills. Is that conflicted at all? Like, do you get paid more if you fill more prescriptions? Like, how does that work?
Well, I like to joke about bad pharmacists. I want to put myself out of business. I want people on the fewest medicines possible. So if you are in a like a retail setting where, and I'm not a business expert. If you're listening and you are, and I'm totally wrong, send Casey me a message and we'll fix it. We'll do a follow-up episode of all the things Cory got wrong. But if you're in a retail pharmacy and you're getting paid per prescription filled, your incentive is to have more prescriptions filled, right? So that would, that would be an air quote conflict. Like you're going to get paid more the more you fill. Where whether you were on 100 prescriptions or two, I didn't get paid any differently. The reimbursement wasn't different. Now, there are some issues with insurances, and again, I'm a bad pharmacist. I'm not a total expert on all of this, but if you have a certain condition, they expect you to be on certain medications. So, like for diabetes, you need to be on a statin for cholesterol. That's just like a standard. So there's like standards you want to hit for that, or certain blood pressure medicines for kidney protection. ACE inhibitors or ARBs are the names of those. So there is a push to have people on certain medicines with certain conditions because we could argue, I'm guessing your listeners would argue against the data for using them in those particular conditions, but we're not going to get into the nuts and bolts of the argument, but that's the conflict there. For me, I want to do what's best for the human being in front of me. And sometimes that meant that they needed to go on insulin because their blood sugar was 450. Like that's a dangerous place to be. So my incentive is to put the person first as much as possible and figure out a solution that was best for them. So in that sense, I was very fortunate. Like I didn't get, if I put you on Ozempic, I don't get a kickback from Ozempic. I wish I did because I'd be super rich, but but I didn't. So the conflict would come if there was certain metrics not being hit, like as far as blood sugar goals, or if I'm taking longer to get you to that goal, or you're supposed to be on a certain medicine for that condition, then we need to get you on more of if enough people hit that, then there are bonuses and stuff that go through insurance. And quite honestly, that's a world that's so complex and beyond me that I jumped out of the plane and parachuted away from it. So.
Got it. Okay. Well, thank you for that explanation. I think there's a lot of assumptions that most people make about pharmacists and kickbacks and whether Ozempic pays you for, pushing more of their meds.
I think that there's a possible conflict of interest, like with some like prescribing, I guess I was prescribing, but a lot of what I was prescribing were generic medicines anyway. So there's not money to really get put into my pocket. And
got it.
So, but yeah, and I'm not an expert in that particular part of the healthcare business. So I can confidently take a deep breath and say, I did not get any extra money if I put people on more medicines. And
got it.
I didn't so every time, so I'll talk about, there is a cost, there's a price to be paid for every medicine that someone goes on. There's the literal tangible monetary cost, but then there's the mental cost. There is going to the pharmacy. There's the insurance problems. There are possible side effects. There are the drug interactions. So for me, I was incentivized to have you on the least medicines possible because it made you a simpler person to take care of. So that's my flip on that whole idea of medications is I would think of the entire cost of someone going on a medicine, not just the dollars and cents.
Yeah, got it. What about like mouse pads? Did you get any like branded mouse pads or like ballpoint pens or anything like that? You at least walk away with some of those benefits.
In pharmacy school, they were still handing those out, and like at a lot of the conferences that I think they've tamped that down, but drugs are still super expensive. So congratulations. I think, yeah, and I think it can be insidious because you can go to a dinner sponsored by a company that makes the medicine, and you're going to eat a nice steak dinner, and you're going to hear all about the good things about this medicine, and you can say, I'm not influenced by this, but I don't know. You went there and ate lobster and steak. You're going to think about that medicine the next time you have an option between two medicines in the same class. So while we're not getting pens and stuff, there's still ways. They'll always find a way.
Disappointing you're not getting the pens and mouse pads. Those are pretty sick. So yeah, bummer. Okay, well, we could ask you about all kinds of different drugs, but obviously the hot drug right now is GLP-1. You mentioned Ozempic by name already. I'm going to throw this out to you and let you go into this however you like. What is the state of the state with this stuff? Because I'm getting a lot of conflicting information. People have different recommendations and experiences with it. I can certainly say what I've seen is a real progression in the way that we are administering these drugs. I hear far less about like nasty side effects that I was hearing about like a year or two ago. I don't know if
Mhm.
that's just people not telling me about it, people not talking about it, or we're getting smarter about how these things are being prescribed. I'm seeing different levels of success. Like, what are you seeing as far as the state of the state on GLP-1?
Yeah, so I think that I want to come at this with a fair and balanced view. So when any new medicine comes out, I'm skeptical because we have not had it on a large group of people. So when we test a medicine, it's on several thousand people, but GLP-1s at this point have been in millions of bodies. So the more bodies that these things go into, you're going to find stuff that you just can't see on a smaller scale, right? So you get a bigger scale. When it comes to weight loss and blood sugar, if we are going to use a medicine for those things, they are some of the best tools we have ever had. Okay. And I think I want to be intellectually honest because when they first came out, I don't want to believe it. I want to be the no medicine pharmacist guy. But dang it, if it's between insulin or glipizide and Ozempic is an incredibly better tool to use in that toolkit. So I will give GLP-1s their due. That being said, we just talked about how I get no money for any of these medicines going out. So I think when you're looking at trying to fix the root cause of metabolic disease, the way they work is they're slowing down transit through your stomach. You're going to eat less, you're going to take less in, we're going to improve the energy toxicity, improve the insulin resistance, lose weight. These are all benefits. There's data showing improvements in the outcomes secondary to diabetes, the heart attack problems, the cardiovascular problems, the kidney problems. And I think we had tons of medicines on the market before that made your numbers better, but you didn't die any less soon. So great. Like let's have tools because if you're listening to this, you are probably lifestyle first kind of person, and that's amazing. I work with people that they came to me because they were forced to, not because they wanted to. Not everyone was coming to Cory to be Mr. Lifestyle. They were coming because the doctor said your A1C is 11 and our pharmacist is going to help you. Like that was it. And they didn't want to change. So if I'm going to have to put you on medicine, GLP-1s are going to be better than many things we had. Side effect wise, I saw all of the bad side effects. When you're paralyzing your stomach, you're going to get nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, the constipation. Some of these linger, some of them don't. And what I found was that when people were given the proper lifestyle advice to go along with a GLP-1, their success and tolerability was much better. And this is purely anecdotal, and this is from patients, from family members of mine that are on these medicines. It's like I went out for fast food and I felt like crap for 3 or 4 days. I was throwing up, I had diarrhea. But when people tended to eat cleaner, and this is the lowest form of evidence and ends of one here, they tolerated it better. Now, there are some people that could eat crap and still tolerate it, but they didn't get as good of results. And there are some people that ate well and just didn't tolerate it. And so the state of the state is that we have several out now, and there's a bunch coming more down the pipeline that have additional mechanisms of action that are going to probably be even more potent for weight loss and for blood sugar. And for people who've been struggling with this for a long time, and I've seen people who make the changes that we talk about, and they still struggle. And these medicines really help them. And for those people, it is a great tool. And like any tool, like a chainsaw, it can cut a tree down and it could cut your limb off. So, and I think there's some data showing like after a year, the discontinuation rate's like 50%. So to think that these are going to save us all, I've seen this story before. I've been a pharmacist 15 years almost. Like the hubris of human ability to create a chemical entity that interacts with our incredibly complex body to be the savior for everyone. I'm tired of the hubris. I'm not going to be hubristic, but I'm also not going to be crazy pessimistic when I've seen them work. So I think the best way to use these is with the proper education and the proper patients too, because I had people coming to me to lose weight because they had 10 pounds to lose for a wedding. That's not the proper use of these medicines. But when someone would come to me saying, I don't want to take this, but I'm so tired of being 200 pounds overweight. What can we do to use it and then have a plan to stop it eventually? So, and that's what I would try to give patients was every time we start a medicine, whether it's a GLP-1, a blood pressure medicine, we're starting this now. It's a tool. What can we do to at some point stop it? What's the off-ramp plan? Because you end up with people on 20, 30, 40 medicines because every doctor starts something without a plan or the idea of the consequences of not stopping it, which I realize I've veered away from GLP-1 land into polypharmacy land. But yeah, that's the state, is that they're the best tool we've had for weight loss. They're one of the best tools for blood sugar. Yet it does not mean that everyone should take them. And if you do take them, we need to be judicious and educate appropriately.
Yeah, got it. Even more nuance in the answer to that question than the asking of the question. So I do appreciate that. I'm going to come at you at two different ways
Hmm.
to answer this question. And the first way, I'm going to say I'm a patient. I've got 100 pounds to lose. What you just said, awesome. I want to be off of this stuff. I'll take it. I want it
Hmm.
off. I'll do whatever. And I am ready, willing, and able to do whatever you tell me to do. You say lifestyle factors. Okay,
Hmm.
cool. I don't know what those lifestyle factors are. You've got somebody coming to you that says, yes, let's take this now. I want to off ramp this. I don't want to be taking this in 6 months. What lifestyle things? What are you going to tell me to do?
Okay. I would keep things incredibly simple. So we would go through sleep and stress. What's your sleep like? What's your stress like? Because I've seen so many people make the diet and exercise changes, and their sleep is crap, and they're stressed to the gills. And I don't have the magic wand to help you with your stress. That's everyone's got to manage in their own ways. So those, I want to acknowledge that I talk about those. But diet and exercise, I keep it very simple. Is that especially if we're going to start a GLP-1 or if we're not, rule one is protein first with each meal. Okay, we're going to maintain and build muscle mass. We are going to naturally increase our body's GLP-1 levels by eating protein so that we're fuller sooner. There's less room for the garbage, which we'll talk about in a moment. Okay. All right. That's number one. Number two, and to my carnivores out there, cover your ears, but I'll talk about fiber. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Sorry to hurt.
Oh,
For those that want to be carnivorous, also just stick with that and we're good to go. But I for the average human out there, fibrous vegetables, just a way to for people who are hungry all the time, like it's very hard to overeat lettuce. It's not a fun food. If you hate lettuce, yell at me. I don't care. But this was what I was this is what I was because I'm not a carnivore pharmacist. I'm okay with an omnivorous world, but fibrous vegetables, not whole grains. Don't worry, we're going to talk about that. So that's two. And what we're trying to do here is get the most nutrition for the least amount of energy possible. So if you've heard of like protein leverage theory, satiety per calorie, I really love Ted Naiman's work, nutrition to energy ratio, because most people coming to me are just, they're hungry all the time and they're eating carbs and fats, and like almost no protein. And people, I'd give a protein recommendation, it'd be like their eyes would bug out of their head, but they wouldn't think twice about eating a whole bag of chips. So that's, we eat those things so that we eat less of pillar three, which is reduce your refined carbs, starches, added sugars, and then like refined added fats, which is seed oils. Like you're gonna naturally eat less of those anyway. And I would literally give patients like a one-page diet handout from Diet Doctor of protein, healthy fat, vegetables, and then don't eat sugars and grains, basically. And I wouldn't even tell them to count calories. I would give them some general protein targets, very simple, because the population I was seeing was Medicare, living on Social Security or often Medicaid, so lower income and working many jobs, a lot of life stress. So like, let's keep this simple. And I would say if you can only start with one meal a day, do that. If you can stop snacking, let's work on that. So just meeting where they're at, and then so that's the diet side, very simple. In the exercise side, if they could track their steps, I would just ask, how many steps are you doing? Let's do more. I wouldn't even give them a specific goal. Like, because I had patients that would say, yeah, I'm pretty active. I get like 2,000 steps a day. I'd be like,
wow.
are you out of your mind? Like, I get
Amazing.
2,000 steps before I get out to walk the dog in my house in the morning. But I'm in my world and they're in their world. I'm like, I'd have to work to only get 2,000 steps a day. So what can we do to get to 2,500? Okay. And then the next week, let's get to 3,000. Like very simple, small changes. Because if you're getting 2,000 steps a day and I see you got to do 10,000, and if you could argue me about the value of just moving, but like we got to move our bodies. So for diabetes specifically, like walking after meals, like give me 5 minutes after each meal. All right. We have evidence to show a 5-minute walk after a meal that's going to help you with your sugar. Okay, and then the other exercise piece is strength training. We've got to build some muscle. So type 2 diabetes is a insulin resistance energy toxicity problem. Our muscle is a metabolic sink, so you have more muscle, there's more place for glucose to be stored. So for long term, if someone says, "I love cookies. I want to be able to eat cookies someday," and not have my sugar spike. Well, we got to burn that sugar and we got to be able to store it better, more efficiently. And I would give them, if anyone's familiar with Dr. Ben Bakikio's workout, it's a 15 minutes twice a week.
Love
Because
it.
they'd be like, I don't know if I could exercise. I'm like, do you have 15 minutes twice a week? Yes, yes, you do. Everyone, and that's the workout. Like full disclosure, I've been doing that workout for 5 years, and based on my DEXA scans, I've put muscle on as I
Me
approach
too.
40. So
Me too.
it's just to me, it's about making it accessible to the human being in front of me, and a lot because like a lot of the people that I took care of, I live in Tucson, a Hispanic culture, about a lot of rice and beans and tortillas. So what can we do? Because I also would say if I tell you never to have a tortilla again, you're never to come back and see me again. So what are we willing to modify? Okay, if we're having dinner, maybe we have cauliflower rice if you love the tortillas, or if you hate tortillas and love rice, what little things can we swap? If you're having three tortillas at each meal, can we get to two? Can we get to one? Like the, and there are the people who are the band-aid rippers who are just like, I'm going full low carb keto, I'm in. Great. I'm here to help you. And there are the people who've eaten this way for 60 years who are a little nervous about it. So what can we change? What's the low-hanging fruit, pardon the pun here? So
I love
that was
that.
my general approach.
Cool.
Very,
No,
very simple. And then from there you modify to see where do they go? What's happening? And
got it.
I think to educate them on what to expect because you don't often see like the weight loss or the sugar drop right away for some people. But if their composition's changing, are your clothes looser? Do you have more energy? If the scale isn't budging, but your waist is smaller, you're losing the visceral fat. You're on. I was. It's like holding their hand. I'm like, listen, stay on the path with me, please. Walk with me. We're gonna get there. And that I think is such an important piece that we often miss.
Man, I love that. That's a great explanation. Unfortunately, when you mentioned the vegetable word here at Boundless Body Radio, the technical difficulties, page comes up and like
Yeah.
don't listen to this song and dance. Technical difficulties at Boundless Body. And just on that note, how funny is it in 2025 that you have to like almost like feel weird defending eating fibrous vegetables
Yeah.
on a like pro carnivore podcast? It's a little bit ridiculous.
Well, here's the deal, pro carnivores. I have had patients that did carnivore and they did great. Not everyone wants to do that. So,
Totally.
like my wife has done some carnivore experimentation to deal with some of the issues she's had. It was very helpful. And then she also likes eating a salad. And but for some like I respect that for some people who touch broccoli, their stomach bloats for a week. And so
Yep.
to be told you must eat that is insane. So I'm going to defend the carnivores right now because it's insane to tell someone you have to eat a food that makes you feel like crap. So and I had patients that were vegetarians. I hate if you think the V words today, I'm pulling them out of here.
Man,
Vegetables and
a
vegetarian.
lot of bleeps, a lot of
A lot
bleeps in
of
this
I
one.
know. Uh, pardon the vulgarity here, but if my approach was if you are eating vegetarian and your sugars are good and you're muscly and your markers are great and you're happy and you're thriving, who am I to tell you you have to do something differently? If you're hitting all the markers, okay, great. But I think the where I'll defend the carnivores is the mass of the world has been told vegetarianism is the way to save the planet. Plant-based is, but so if you do carnivore, you're a crazy person. But the crazy thing is not incorporating animal products that make us feel better. So I feel like I'm in like a tug of war here. I can
Totally.
defend both sides. I won't defend the insanity of not letting an individual who has unique biology DNA find something that works for him. So
Perfect.
the problem is
Yeah.
I find that a lot of the people with the V words tell us that we can't eat meat, and that's where I will put my foot down and say, "This is no. You do your thing. I'll eat my way, but stop telling me I cannot have my eggs and steak." So
Apologies to the ladies and gentlemen listening out there. If you've been offended by any of this, we do apologize. We'll try to bring this down a little bit and be a little bit more accommodating to you. No, I love that. As much as we love carnivore around here, we agree. Anything that works for anybody.
mhm.
I just talked to a vegan who's been like true vegan for 30 years and he's pulling it off and he looks great and he's a good friend of mine. And like it's fun to have those conversations. So I love
Mhm.
that. We don't try to take any sides around here, regardless of our own opinions. So I love that. So that was case study number one. I am a patient. I've got 100 pounds to lose. I'm on board. I want to get off this stuff. You gave me
Yeah.
all the recommendations. Case
Yep.
study number two is I've got 100 pounds to lose. I'm coming to you because I have amazing insurance. It's going to cover this for my whole life if I want.
Mhm.
I don't care. I'm gonna go out to eat. I go out to eat for lunch every day at work. I'm gonna
Mhm.
continue to do that. I might do like one thing. If you can slip in like one little thing of all the things that you said, which was, basically keep it really simple. What's the
Yeah.
one thing that you would say, like, okay, here's your prescription. And by the way, if you could do this.
Okay. Order of operations when you eat. protein first because you're not going to be as hungry. So we have got to make sure your body's getting the nutrition it needs. And it crushes me to not be able to say also strength train because I think that's going to be crucial. But if this person's like, give me one thing, they can give me 10 minutes twice a week to strength train. I'm gonna cheat your scenario, but no, this is the thing I told a lot of my patients because their appetites would tank. And a lot of you could talk to people in the world and say there's a lot of muscle loss with GLP-1s. You could say, is it GLP-1 specific, or is it because we're so hyper caloric that we're literally not eating enough to sustain our bodies? Wherever you want to fight about that, the point is you've got to if you're not going to be as hungry when you're eating, you got to put the protein in your body first to help you. Now, the strength training will help to certainly maintain the muscle mass. You can't ignore it. It's protein and do a push-up or something, I guess, along with it.
It's painful. I know. It's painful to not recommend both. I mean, it was even yesterday, one of my clients was telling me she met up with a friend for lunch. The friend has been on a GLP-1. She said she literally walked around the coffee shop looking for this person when the person was there all the time waiting for her. She didn't recognize her. This woman had lost 75 pounds, was stoked that she'd been on GLP-1, lost all this weight. I'm assuming it's probably the first time in her life she's been able to lose and sustain weight. And she looks like she's aged like 15 years and her hair is really thin. And my client is just telling me like, man, I wish I could just tell her like, if you change the way you're eating or just tug on a resistance band once a week.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, Dr. Ben's workout. That's all I've done. I don't train more than like 20 minutes in an entire week. And I've been able to maintain my muscle mass. Like you wish you could just say like, just this one little thing you could do. But I agree with you. If you were going to choose one thing, I really would want you to choose two and do strength training as well. But I would rather count on what you said, like eat the protein, prioritize that. I feel like your body will do a better job maintaining muscle mass than if you were attempting to strength train and not eating an adequate amount of protein.
Yeah, well, the problem also becomes that people will continue eating their same crap food just in smaller amounts, and they don't see the weight loss that they want. So, and yeah, this is the hard part of medicine. It's great. There's gray area, but I think that the biggest pitfall I've seen is continuing to eat the same foods just in smaller amounts. And so your body's, when you're obese and metabolically dysfunctional, you're malnourished, but you're overfed. You're overfed and undernourished. And so you get on a GLP-1 and you're still undernourished, but you're just not as overfed. So yeah,
weird paradox.
Yeah, but at the same time, being down 75 pounds, your body doesn't have to carry that around. Like I can't argue against that. So, and so this is the problem with any new medicine or any new treatment paradigm is it comes out, we learn stuff, we learn from mistakes. And unfortunately, if you're in that first wave of people using a medicine, you're part of the experiment. It sounds very tinfoil hatty, but in fairness, we've had GLP-1s for 15 years. Like we've had them around. It's just this generation, the once weekly ones, the Ozempic, Trulicity, and now Mounjaro, which is a dual mechanism, are more effective. So they're getting much more attention. And then we had TikTok to make celebrities go and talk about them. So they got more popular too, but we won't talk about that. We should ban direct-to-consumer advertising on TV. They will find a way, folks. They will find a way to market it. So.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. That's a good point. And yeah, to your point, these things have been around for a long time. You mentioned earlier that the new ones are coming out that have more mechanisms of how they work. And a recent guest explained that to us, that like the first generation was like one mechanism. The current generation is like two mechanisms. The next generation is going to be 3+, and we're going to continue to learn and grow and all that stuff. Are you optimistic in the direction that these are evolving?
Yes and no. I think that if we can take a tool and make it more tolerable and more effective, if you're going to be injecting a medicine, we might as well make it the safest and most effective as possible. And I sound like a pharma rep right now, I know, but this is just seeking generalities. Like if your kid had to take an antibiotic, do you want the most effective one or do you want the worst one? Of course you want the most effective one. So if we're going to use this, let's have the most safe and effective one with the best data. I'm pessimistic in the sense that we're thinking that this is going to save humanity. Now, for the first time, I think I was looking at obesity statistics that finally ticked down. And it's not because people are going for more walks. Let's be real. Millions of people are taking these drugs. On the whole, it's going to save the healthcare system a ton of money if we don't have obesity-related diseases. So that part I'm optimistic. But the pessimistic side for me is relying on any external pharmaceutical, you're at the mercy of the pharmaceutical company. We could complain about the $1,000 a month cost. We could complain about insurance coverage. But the reality is I had a point in the last 3 years when I was practicing where any one of these GLP-1s were on back order. And so patients were reliant upon them and they demanded them, and then they're out. And what do? Because if you have not been building the body to sustain your life without them, you're screwed. Like if you're one of the people that loses muscle mass with a GLP-1 and you stop it, well, your metabolism is literally going to be slower. Like muscle's metabolically active. So when people stop and gain the weight back, it's no shock. And then you have less muscle mass to deal with your blood sugar. Like always, whenever you take a long-term medicine, if there's a way to build your body in a way to not need it, I say go for it. And if you need this medicine for life, there's zero judgment. Like I'm thrilled. I have friends and family. These have been lifesavers for them because they're not, you got to want, whether it's a want or you've been given poor education or there's some internal mechanism that this just helps with, like the food noise, the food addiction. So many people have talked about it helps with the food noise and food addiction. Amazing, because we live in a world of freaking addicting food. It can feel like learned helplessness. And that's what I tell my patients. I would say, this is not your fault, but it is your responsibility because you've been engineered in an environment of being sedentary, and Grubhub will deliver the most delicious engineered food to your door in 30 minutes in a way that the greatest kings 100 years ago could have only imagined. And everything in this world is working against your health. So it's not your fault that we end up this way by default, but now you have this information. It's your responsibility to use it how you wish, and I'm here to help you on that journey.
That's so well said. It's the terrible reconciliation of this is the world that we live in and this is the way we were set up, and they just don't work together. And it is so easy to get amazing, delicious, incredible food that you just would not have gotten even just a few years ago. So I love that. Very well said. Is there any other thing you would like to talk about as far as GLP-1?
I think we hit everything. We beat this thing to death. I think, as I said, and to summarize, the best tool we've had so far for weight and blood sugar comes with its risks. It certainly can have side effects. I've had people that have had long-term side effects from it, so we can't pretend that that's not a real thing. One thing I did see, it was almost like drug-seeking behavior. Like I was in pharmacy school during the peak of the opiate epidemic in the late 2000s, and the way people would come wanting and demanding these things from me had hints and shades of opiates. And so that's something that does scare me. And as you say, losing 75 pounds when you've never been able to get to that weight, it's addicting. And I don't blame people for that. So what education are we going to give along with it? I think we need to have the lifestyle talk, the diet, the exercise, but also the mental side of it. Like this is going to change how you look. You've been a certain way a long time and you're going to get different looks. It's going to make you feel things. What is the long-term plan? How are we going to deal with these emotions? Because that's a real thing. And gosh, yeah, just being reliant upon any medicine makes me nervous because of you're a hurricane in Puerto Rico away from not having normal sailing for your hospitals. You're a tornado in New Jersey away from the GLP-1s being on back order for a year. So take your health into your own hands as much as possible. Use these medicines wisely with the right guidance, with no judgment from me, but just yeah, that's it. That's the end of my TED Talk here. Sorry.
Love it. I love it, man. A lot of nuance there and a lot to pick apart for a lot of people, but I like that you approach it that way and make it open. I said the same thing to my client. Like, I'm not going to yuck somebody's yum, and this person lost 75 pounds. That's incredible. Like that, she should have a parade in her hometown. That's incredible. And yeah, I wish she could add some things and look at things a little bit differently, but that's a great start. And we want to celebrate that. So I really appreciate the way you approach that. I do want to talk briefly about how you're sharing your message. You have a podcast you've started recently. You're still traveling around, talking with people. Tell us about what that's been like and what your message has been.
Yeah, so my podcast is called the Diabetes Remission Roadmap, and so it's hosted with myself and another pharmacist by the name of Brian Bisher, who he's a great friend of mine. He heard me on a podcast 5 years ago, reached out on LinkedIn, and we became like amazing friends. Like our families have hung out together, gone on vacations together. He lives in Ohio, so we're geographically separate, but we're on this mission to reverse 100,000 cases of type 2 diabetes, and so we're sharing our message on the podcast. We'd love a listen. We talk about the nuts and bolts, but we talk a lot about mindset too, because I think it requires a lot of mindset shift to get to a place where you're willing, able to sustain a change in your health. So that's one piece of it. I'm a professional speaker, so I do my improv for healthcare or for any profession that needs a little bit of fun and human interaction. I think it's it's a fun way to share that. And I have a new talk that I'm going out and speaking this spring. I actually have my first one with the new talk where it's a talk on, it's a self-care talk, it's a burnout talk, but it's not a self-care talk because it's talking about how taking care of our health, a lot of times we won't do it because it feels selfish. It feels wrong. I need to be in service of others. But the reality is you cannot be in service of others if you do not care for yourself. So it was inspired by hundreds and thousands of patients I've taken care of where their health declines and they're no longer to be able to take care of their family, their business, the world around them. So the idea is essentially health isn't selfish, it's service. And so it's sort of a wake up call to overworked and overstressed high performers that are putting their work in front of their health. And I touch on diet and exercise, but we don't forget about the other pillars, our relationships, our environment, uh, in the play. That's sort of my thing is we got to have a point to all this. And it's not just to have a 8% body fat. We got to enjoy life along the way too.
I love that. Well, the podcast is great. You guys do an amazing job. I've really enjoyed listening in. And then one other thing I wanted to cover is recently I just saw a picture of you. You look absolutely shredded, best shape I've ever seen you in. And yeah, talking about your work that you mentioned earlier, kind of following along with Ted Naiman's work. We've been fortunate enough to host him on our show and focusing on satiety per calorie. A little bit of, again, we're getting into probably some controversial stuff for the carnivore audience here, but tell us about satiety per calorie and how that's really helped you to achieve a new body composition and what looks like amazing health one day after your 39th birthday.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So the satiety per calorie is essentially how can we get the most fullness and nutrition for the least amount of caloric energy? And I know there's the two V words are bad words and calorie can be a bad word around here too. And so my thing is like, I don't count calories. I don't ignore calories. I think calories in, calories out is way oversimplified because there's so many things that can affect how our body burns calories. Like I have a post that I'm going to be working on where I remember we had a doctor I worked with that said, you eat one extra potato chip for 10 years and you gain 20 pounds. Like your body's not that dumb. Give me a break. Like you're going to regulate up and down. So what I really focused on, and I, 2016 on, I was lower carb. I don't know if I was keto. I was never tracking my ketones. And around 2020, 2021, Tate Naiman's first book came out. It was, I think, 2019, the PE diet, the protein to energy ratio. And I was like, this is interesting. And I think I got into this whole world because I was curious. And I didn't need to cut carbs because I had a mental health thing or any other seizure thing. I just felt fuller all the time. It was amazing. As someone going from a sugar burning, low fat person to be able to be fat adapted, it was amazing. It's a party trick. I can travel across the country and not need to eat breakfast. It's great. With little kids, I don't got time for it. So going with the satiety per calorie approach, I'm still eating lower carb than the average American. I'm just not added, like I've cut back on my added fats, which is for the low carb folks. We know nuts and dairy are probably, unless you're carnivore, then it's off the table. But nuts and dairy are probably two of the big places where I would overconsume past the point of fullness. So just cutting back on that added fat a little bit and being a little more liberal with whole food carbs. So sweet potatoes, I'll do French fries that I cut from a regular potato in the air fryer. I'll do some lentils. I'll do some quinoa. Sorry, Vinny Tortorich. I know how he feels about quinoa. I kind of like it. I like my wife when we first started dating, she would make this baked oatmeal. That was really good. Well, we'll have that. And we have little kids and we don't feed them highly processed garbage, but they do need energy and they'll only eat so much cheese and salami before, we'll make them a sandwich, folks. And we'll use my mother-in-law's homemade sourdough. Like I'm not going to not eat that. So I would say that Ted's works influenced me. And then Bill Schindler, who wrote a great book called Eat Like a Human, who went through how some off limit carb foods, when processed appropriately, the way nature intended, are less detrimental to our health. So I'm not here to be tied to a dietary dogma. I like the SPC approach because it kind of explains why if you're doing a well formulated low vegetarian diet to a well formulated low carb diet, they all work. So, and I'm here to help people. I don't like to yell about stuff on the internet too much. And I'm always nervous because also the carnivores are some of the nicest people. I don't want to piss you off. So if you're eating carnivore and you feel great, keep it up. This is just what's worked for me. And a season of life where my sleep sucks because my kids are little, stress is high because you're running around all over the place, leaving a job. It's just been sort of a nice steady way to not have to overthink about food and maintain a good body composition as I approach that fourth decade.
That's awesome. Congratulations. We love hearing about that. And I think we forget in this space that we all have way, way, way more in common with each other than we have differences. And whether somebody's eating broccoli or not, it really is just not that big of a deal. I'm probably not going to anytime soon, but that's okay. Like, we want to talk
No,
about all
we're
those
going to get
options.
together. We're going to eat like 100 eggs. That's our thing. We're going
Totally.
to scramble
Exactly.
100 eggs and eat it.
That sounds great. That sounds great. Yeah, I really love that. And I always want to be clear that I define a carnivore as a hyper carnivore is defined in nature where they're eating 75, 70% north of their calories from animal products. And that doesn't mean that you can have other things. Animals are like that. They are omnivores. They specialize. Most animals specialize in eating mostly plants or mostly animals, but most animals are omnivores. They can eat lots of things, and humans are different. And so it's cool that you've been able to work that in and feel a little better.
Well, thank you. And there's certainly some non-animal product foods that make me feel like crap that I don't eat.
Totally.
And I still don't eat them. So
Yeah,
don't,
totally.
yeah. And yeah, the ability to just feel full and satisfied all the time and not have to think about it. Eating this way, I still don't eat like processed garbage. So I take that off the table and it makes life a lot simpler and fun. And yeah, man, it's a big tent. There's a lot of sick people out there, and I want to help as many of them with where they're coming from as possible. You do an amazing job, Casey. So kudos to you. You're just the most
Thank you.
affable, kind human being to talk with. So I really appreciate you sharing your platform with me for yet again. So
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. It's been an honor to host you. If you don't mind, tell people where they can go to find you and connect with you and your work.
great. So if you go to my website, CoryJenks.com, no E in Cory. My parents were teachers, couldn't afford to buy the vowel. So CoryJenks. You can connect with me from there on all my different platforms. But I'm mostly active on X and LinkedIn. And then our podcast is called the Diabetes Remission Roadmap. It's on Apple and Spotify. So you can go on there and take a listen. And I think that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. And as Casey mentioned, I have a couple of books, Permission to Care, and then the other one is called I Guess I'm a Dad Now. It's a fun parenting book. And if you loved how I talked about food today, I have my biggest chapter is about how we feed our kids probably. So you'll get some good recipes there. So I always love sharing that, and connect with me wherever you are. Tell me if you loved it or hated it. I have a thick skin. My kids have grown it for me. So whatever you say can't be as mean as what my kids tell me. So
That's amazing. If somebody made it through this episode with all the profanity, I think they'll be just fine. Dr. Jenks, really appreciate your time and really appreciate the message you share. It's nuanced and very valuable for people. So thank you so very much for taking the time to be on our show again today. We really appreciate you.
anytime. Thanks again.
Yeah, you're welcome. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.